you were a single agent, and then all of a sudden, like, did you get to the point, where everyone's like, oh, you have this much production, you need to bring a buyer's agent on? Or was it just like a mindset shift where you're like, hey, like, I'm going to do this now?
The truth is, when I hired my assistant, I was paying her about 40% of my GCI. Mm-hmm. So I was nowhere near being ready from a production standpoint to hire. But it was more of a mindset, like, readiness.
Yeah.
Where I realized the value of my time was doing certain activities, and everything else, if I did, was an opportunity cost for me to build a bigger business. And why was building a bigger business important is because I want to have a better life. I want to be able to help more people. And ultimately that means more freedom, and the bigger the team gets, we kind of talked about being sheltered away from another job coming back.
Well, do you feel like when the team gets bigger, because this is something that I think some people don't realize, is like you put all this effort into people and then they leave, but now you're getting so big that you're not so day to day with those people, so it's not a more emotional thing towards you?
One of the lessons I've learned with team building the past 5 years, and with departures, right, good and bad, is that ultimately your culture is really held by your W2 and your operational success team. These are the people that are going to be consistently within your business. Hopefully, right? You treat them well. They're not there necessarily to make the 1099 big paycheck of commission. They want to feel valued, and they will hold to the standards and the systems and the processes that you have them implement. And it's the agents that have a hard time playing by the rules.
Yeah.
But if the agents play by the rules, they should be working at a higher dollar per hour. And as long as you help them focus on higher dollar per hour, the only reason why they would leave, if it's not a cultural fit or if they want to do their own thing, but that should have been vetted out early on in the interview process. Yeah. And sometimes people change, and that happens where they do want to do their own thing and they want to take that leap of faith. And, as a leader and as just a person in the industry, sometimes we just have to applaud them and give them that space to try. Yeah. If they succeed, at least you were part of the contributing factor of their success. If they fail, still be there. As much as obviously you might take a hit in your own business, but ultimately you should have strong people, systems, and processes where your business, even if it falters a little bit, is still on a trajectory of growth.
Yeah, and I think that's the hard part in our industry, is that realtors come in and it's like, something like Gary Vee always says, like, not everyone's the number one person in the company, but number 2 or number 4 makes a lot of money. And I think that's sometimes, like, we've heard a few people talk about, like, the ego of being a real estate agent, where it's like, you don't have to be number 1, but you still could make a really good living.
I'll tell you this. I was part of Gary Keller's Top 100, and we would meet all the top agents throughout the nation at KW. When I started joining, and I went for 4 sessions, one every quarter, they started to talk about P&Ls. And you get in that room by being super productive based on volume, but there was no transparency when it came to how much you actually fucking net in the business. And people started to get exposed because when they were asked for P&Ls, they had a hard time producing it, because just like shying away from reality of life, whether it's tracking your macros for diet, whether it's tracking your numbers when it comes to, let's say, business, contacts and everything, people were not tracking their numbers. They just threw money at different marketing initiatives, kind of what we were talking about. Yeah. Like, how do you know you're getting a return? People didn't know. And just because you put big numbers and you might stand on a stage, if you don't make jack shit at the end of the day and put it in your bank account, you're just a fraud.
Yeah,
What's the point?
I think that's the hardest part about this job, is that you look at those big people and you literally have no idea, because there's people like my old company I worked at where there would be top producing teams getting loans from escrow for a check, and I'm like, how is that possible, dude? Your team's closing like 15 deals a month. How are you like asking for a loan right now?
Some people just live paycheck to paycheck, even real estate. They're selling millions of dollars. It's amazing, but that's the perspective we need. In our industry or in anything we do, there always has to be 100% of the people, and really only maybe 10, 15, 20% that actually do the production. Out of those, 20% of them actually net a lot of money.
Yeah.
And the others, who knows what's going on.
Well, and then too, like, something you said earlier that was very interesting, how you were, you had your assistant before you even needed an assistant. And like, I feel like that was the same thing that people don't realize. Sometimes you have to take that leap of faith, because I don't know if anyone knows this, but hiring your first employee is the scariest thing in the world, because you're like, I gotta get this money, I gotta get this person to have a paycheck every week. I gotta keep producing. I hope they're good, because if not, then I have to fire them. And then people don't go. It's like payroll, all these things that go into it that you're just not even realizing it. So after you made that first hire, were you felt like, is that what kind of leveled you up to going to where you're at now? Like that first, just like, okay, we got that in place, and then we just kept it moving.
The reality is most people think they need to hire a salesperson first because they need sales support, because they're a salesperson. They know what they need help with. But what they don't realize is they could create leverage for themselves and future salespeople if they hired a right supporting cast, which is the operational person. So when I hired the operational person and I delegated everything that was not a sales duty and was not the higher paying dollar per hour task that requires more skills, such as talking to people, making sure you diplomatically, present yourself and so forth, it just elevated what we could do, because I knew the things were taken care of. It meant less time spent, but also less energy switching from task to task.
Yeah.
And from there, it's just a magnifying of the sales duties by having more salespeople. And then with more salespeople, you need to support them by having more operational people. And with more operational people, they started to segment what they did to be focused in a core competency, whether it's escrow, listings, marketing, so they could really execute at a higher level.